Okay.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So just to go through the basic feature, this one is the brush library, and all of these brushes are just for free to use. There's a lot of brushes, obviously, but I only use like maybe 3 or 4. Um, if you guys want to vectorize things, I suggest doing something with a really clear outline. So something like a studio pen in the inking file. That's something that's really good for outlining. And then if you tap into the pen, you can also do all these different adjustments to it. I don't really touch them except for the streamline. If I make streamline max, you'll see that when I draw things, it kind of smooth things out. So that's useful if you're making like circles and ovals and shapes, but it's not very useful when you're trying to give yourself more flexibility or when you're trying to write something. So I'm actually gonna put that down a little bit. And then this is a smudge tool, which I don't really use, but you can use that if you want to blend different colors together. This is an eraser. Erasers also come with different brushes, so you can adjust that too. I usually just leave it at Studio Pen. And then these are your layers. So your background, you can change your background color by tapping background, or you can, sometimes I like to clear the background when I want to write something so that I have like the grid at the back to kind of guide me to make sure I'm writing straight. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and draw bacteria, and along the way I'll illustrate the main things that you guys need to know to use this tool. So I mentioned earlier that it's really important for you guys to know what you're drawing before you start. So for example, when we want to draw bacteria, it's important to know, what's in a bacteria, or like what are the basic shapes of bacteria. So I did a quick little research last night. I know that there are 3 basic shapes of bacteria. One is called, oops, it's too thick. Coxy, I think that's how you pronounce it, and that just means spherical. And then we have, I think this is how you spell it, bacillus, and that just means rod shape. And then the other one, I'm forgetting how to, I think it's called spirochete or something like that, and that just means like spiral. So we know there are these basic shapes of bacteria. So for example, if you want to come up with bacteria icons for flyers on Canva or your PowerPoint presentation, knowing these will allow you to create not only a fun illustration, but also accurate ones. So you're not just coming up with weird shapes of bacteria that don't even exist. And so another thing you want to know is bacteria have no nucleus, and they have DNA and ribosomes and a cell wall as well. So when you draw bacteria, just make sure you have all the main features in it. So we can
You draw on your iPad? Are you on your iPad right now?
Yeah, I'm on my iPad right now. So I'm just gonna pick the broad shape and draw that. And so palettes, you can actually save different colors. I actually have a BatLab palette right there that I use before when I draw stuff for BatLab, but you can also just have as many palettes as you want. I'm not very organized with it, so it's like kind of, I have like 20, 30 palettes, but yeah. So I'm gonna just pick a color from the BatLab palette. I'm just gonna do this blue, and then I'm just gonna draw a rod. And in order to fill color, I know you guys can't see my pen right now, but what I'm doing is I'm holding down, if you look at the top right corner where that circle of color is, I'm basically tapping it and holding it and dragging it to the shape. And that allows me to fill the color. So that's gonna save you a lot of time. An important thing that you wanna play around with in Procreate is layers, and that's gonna be really handy. So I know that bacteria has a cell wall. So I'm basically just gonna add a layer on top of what I already have with maybe a slightly darker color, and just draw a smaller oval. So that's gonna be my cytoplasmic area of the bacteria. And then we also know that bacteria have hair-like structure called a pili or pilus. And so I'm just gonna draw that, I'm just gonna and you can see this is really easy to draw. I'm literally just drawing lines. Okay, so this already looks like a bacteria, so you can leave it like that. And and if you look over here, I did put them into different layers, and there's a reason for that. This will allow you to change colors really easily. So for example, you decide that you don't want your bacteria to be this color anymore, or maybe you want bacteria of different colors. So you can click each layer, and there are these options that pop up on the left. And if you click alpha locked, that's basically gonna isolate the colored part of that layer. So now, since it's alpha locked, I can pick any color I want. And then when I paint it, it's only gonna paint the area that's been painted. So you don't have to worry about, painting over the line or anything like that. And then you can do the same with the other layer to match the color. So you also click alpha locked and pick a lighter color and just do that. Okay, and one easy trick that I have to make your drawings a little more 3D or lively is just to add shadows. So this is another reason why alpha locking is really handy, because you want to just keep everything within the area that you've already painted. So for example, I want a dark shadow somewhere to make it look more 3D. So I would pick a color that's slightly darker, go back to this layer, layer 3, and just do a little shadow. And then you can also add some lighter shadow at the top. Just, it already makes the whole thing a little bit more three-dimensional. And then you can just keep adding things. For example, here I want the cell wall to look a little bit more structured. So I would just add some lines. Yeah. So something as simple as that. And that's basically the main features you want to know in order to draw. And basically the main takeaway is play around with your layers, and you can, depending on where you put it, it puts it behind one or ahead of one. So for example, now layer 2 is below layer 3. So that means layer 2 is behind layer 3. So if I move layer 2 above, it's going to cover layer 2. It's going to cover layer 3. And then you can also change the opacity. So if you click this N here, you can make it a little more transparent or a little bit, max opacity. And what's useful about this is, for example, you want this bacteria to look like it's covered in a spherical glass. I don't know why you would, but I'm just gonna, create that scenario now. So if you want to do that, you create a new layer, and then you draw a circle around it, and then you fill that circle, and then you change this opacity to be 30%. And then I'm just gonna do a little bit of shading. So I go to painting. Water brush is another brush that I use often. I'm gonna find a darker color. I'm going to alpha lock this. And then I'm just gonna draw a shade of dark blue around it. And if you don't know how to draw certain things, you can just Google image and just basically pick out whatever is important in that drawing for you and try to recreate it. That's honestly how you learn to draw a lot of these things. It's just through experimentation and a lot of imitation in the beginning. And then you know that when you look at a glass, usually there's a lot of reflection, or there's a ring of white color on the side. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of that here. So yeah, so now it looks like the bacteria is inside. You can interpret it as it's on a petri dish or in a spherical glass. And then when you're ready to export, I'm gonna just delete the writings. You just go over to this tool, and then you can export it. You can share it as any file you want. So usually you share it as a JPEG or a PNG. And what's useful about this background tool is you can make the background disappear. So imagine if you want to put drawings on your PowerPoint presentation, but you don't want that white background to be with your picture, then you can just clear the background. And when you export it that way, it's going to not include the background. Yeah, so that's basically like a really quick tutorial of how to use Procreate. Do you guys have any questions before I move on to GIFs?
It's so cool.
You're so talented.
It's
No.
beautiful.
Cool.
I'm literally in shock. I can't believe you just drew that in like 5 seconds. It looks so beautiful.
Honestly, practice makes perfect. Like, you guys can do it too. I just spend way too much time on this app. Like, if you, like, I have like so many things here because I literally spend all my time on this app. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys quickly how to draw a GIF. So I actually just learned this last week. All the GIFs that you guys see on Instagram stories, those are just created by like people for free, and you don't get paid to do any of that. So I've actually thought about doing that, but then one, it takes a lot of time, and also two, it's once I thought about doing it, then I ran out of ideas of what GIFs are needed. Until yesterday, when I was trying to post that story on Instagram about our Inside Out study, I realized there isn't one for new study alert. There's a lot of, you know, GIFs for new post alert or new post, tap here, but there's not one for new study alert. So I figured we can make one ourselves, and it's actually really simple. So if I go over to the BabLab palette, I'm just gonna go with this color, pink. And then I'll stick with Studio Pen. And literally, I'm just gonna write new study alert. So.
And this app was called what?
This is also Procreate.
Oh, they're both Procreate. Okay.
Yeah, I'm using Procreate for everything. It's a really versatile tool.
I don't see it. Is it only on
Do you see it?
iPad?
It's only on iPad.
Oh, okay.
Are you trying to look for it on desktop?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so far it's only on iPad. I really hope they expand it to desktop though. Okay. And then I'm going to add like little lines on the side that we're going to make animated. So an important thing about animation, so a lot of animators are going to talk about onion skin. So that's basically, let me just show you guys because it's going to be easier if I show you guys. So I'm basically gonna, because I don't want the words new study alert to move. I just want the yellow lines on the side to move. So I'm actually gonna copy this layer. So I'm gonna go over to the top left, this toolbar icon, tap it, and then go to add, and then press copy. And then I'm gonna paste it. And so now I have 2 layers of the same thing. So in order to create an onion skin, so that's basically like a 50% opacity of the frame before the one you're working on right now. So I'm gonna turn layer 1 into about 50% opacity. And then obviously you don't see anything's changing because the top layer is still 100% opacity. But when you start erasing the top layer, so I'm gonna erase the yellow of the top layer, and you see that at the bottom you still see the yellow layer of the yellow color of the first layer, but it's less opacity. So that's basically what onion skin is. So it allows you to see what the frame you have before is like, but at a lower opacity. So now you can use that as a guide for where your second frame is gonna go. So I'm gonna draw the lines a little above the previous frame on the left side and a little bit below on the other side. So it kind of creates like, as if the line are moving, you know, in a clockwise direction. So honestly, for GIFs, all you need is 2 frames. So I'm basically done with the drawing. So I'm gonna increase this opacity back to 100. And in order to make a GIF, and we know that we don't want the white background because we just want the writing and the line. So I'm gonna clear the background. And then this is the important trick to make it a GIF. And it's kind of hard to see if you don't see my pen, but I'm basically, so tap on layer 1. And if you see that white check on the right side, I'm basically pressing and holding. And when that happens, you'll notice that the check mark of every other layer is gone. And then after that, I'm going to go up and click on the square of the empty square of the layer above and press and hold. And that's it. So I basically told the app that I want the frame to go from layer 1 to inserted image. So now if I go to the tool on the left and I click share and I click animated GIF. Okay, so obviously it's going really fast. So we want to turn the frames per second down to about, let's see, I think that's a good speed. And then I want the background to be transparent. So that's already on. So if it's not, it would have the white background, but we don't want that. So I'm gonna click transparent background. And then I'm going to export this. And I'm gonna show you guys this on my phone. So exporting, I'm gonna go in AirDrop. I'm gonna AirDrop to my phone. Okay, and then I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and show you guys on the phone. Okay, so you guys see my screen?
Cute.
Okay, so I have it on my phone now. And then if I go and create a story, so you first have to create a story. So I'm just gonna take a random picture of my living room. So I have a post on my story. So, and then I go back to my photos and then I basically just copy this image. So copy photo. And then I go back to my Instagram. And then this thing is gonna pop up in the bottom that says add sticker. Oh, it's gone. Okay, let me try that again. I guess I have to tap it right away. Copy photo, go back to my phone, and then it's there.
Wow. I had no idea you could do that.
Yeah, so
So cool.
we can just create all these for our
Incredible.
Bab Lab. We can come up with like icons for Bab Lab.
Wow.
You know, we can
I
draw our
love
little
it.
guy
Wow.
and stuff like that. So we can, you know, put this on our stories or whatever you guys want. And you can use this for your own pleasure too. And come up with
So
any
cool.
jokes you guys want if you can't find anything on Instagram. But yeah, so that's a really, I know it's probably like, it looks a lot harder when you see someone else do it, especially because I was going a little fast, but trust me, if you start doing it, it's gonna be really easy. But yeah, that's basically all I have for, for part 1 of Procreate. If you guys have any questions,
Yay.
let me know.
I have a question.
Thank
For
you.
those of us who are handwriting challenged, could you use like text, like fonts, and do the same kind of
Yeah.
thing?
You could. I would. I actually haven't tried that, but I know you can also create GIFs on Photoshop. So that could be another thing that I can go through next time. But I believe you can just, I'm pretty sure Let me get back to you on that if you can paste the text. But you could
Yeah.
also, because I know you know how to use Photoshop or Illustrator, so you could like find a text you want and then, you know, like get rid of the background and just copy and paste that into Procreate.
Yeah, that's true.
If
That's
you want
true.
as well.
As like an image.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weren't you
So you
also
can totally do that.
like there was a setting that you clicked in the very beginning on Paintbrush that allowed it to smooth everything out? So if you were to turn that all the way up while you were writing, would that make it sense?
It would make the line smoother, but like when you're trying to turn corners, it would not give you a clear edge. So your ends, instead of looking like that, it will look kind of like a spiral.
Okay.
So kind of like more like cursive.
Yeah, I guess it's good if you want to write cursive. Then you turn the streamline all the way up. But you can also use the grid at the back as your guide, like literally like imagining you're filling in the grid if you want to draw straight lines. Yeah. Or you can insert an image that you want of a writing that you want and just trace over it. Just create a new layer on top and trace over it and then get rid of the image.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So is the way that you like animated all those really complex things on your like letters to Aileen like Instagram, like you actually just created it all on one layer and then like copied the layers many times and added them onto each other?
Yeah, I can show you guys quickly like what the carrot one looked like because that one's actually the craziest I've done. It has like over, I think almost 100 layers. And that was literally me going on YouTube and figuring out what a walk cycle is.
Yeah, that's kind of hard actually.
Yeah. So if I go to veggie, I call it veggie final. It's loading because there's a lot of layers. So there's all these, oh, that's not even the final one. Hold on. Let me go to plant phase. I think it's this one. Okay. So it has all these layers. So if I make all of them appear, oops, hold up. Okay, so that's all the layers out all at once. So if I show you guys one by one, that's one frame, and then the next frame, I literally just copied. So when I drew this, I had, actually, it'll probably be easier if I show you guys my draft. Let me see. Carrot. I have too many drafts. Okay, I'll show you guys the garlic one. Okay, this isn't exactly what I'm looking for, but it's okay. So I always start with a draft of just outline first before I color, just so I know exactly where the legs are going. So if you YouTube walk cycle or run cycle, they'll basically tell you there's a series of 6 different positions you want your object to be at, and then you can just keep repeating that cycle. And then so if you notice, I literally kept the garlic portion of it the same. I just copied and pasted that and moved it over. And obviously I drew some guidelines to make sure I move everything over by the same amount each frame so that it doesn't look weird. And then the next frame, I literally just moved it a little bit more to the right and down because now the person is, well, the garlic is now, floating down a little bit. And so I want to find, okay, this is actually a good example. So I use these guidelines at the top. So that's how much I'm going to move up and down. And because it's a cycle, there's going to be a lot of repetitive movement. So a lot of the time I want them to be at the same height. I don't want to look like it's going up and down at various rates. So I use guidelines. And then I even use, because there's a walk cycle, a run cycle, but there isn't a skateboarding cycle, obviously. So I just YouTube, like a video of someone skating. And then I just screenshotted different frames. And I use that as a guideline in terms of where I want the legs to be. So you guys can even play around with this on paper. It's kind of like a flip book if you think about it.
Wow.
Oh, and here's a good example. So I know that the skateboard and the eggplant is not going to change. well, obviously it probably does change in real life, but to keep it simple, I'm only going to change the legs. So I made them different layers. So the eggplant and the skateboard is going to be its own layer, and I just add a leg layer to it. And then later I can merge the two together when I want to create a final version. But I always keep my draft also, because in case I want to come back and change things, I want to make sure that I have, you know, the two layers separated instead of having to go back and redraw the whole thing. But yeah, so it's a lot of experimentation and it's a lot of fun.
Wow,
and you can draw it
it's
on
like
paper as
so
well.
much work.
Yeah, the vegetable one took me a whole weekend.
Oh my God. I can't believe it took
Yeah.
you not longer than that.
Well, it's a whole weekend of like nonstop just me on the iPad.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it's
so
fun.
cool. You could literally be like a professional animator.
Oh, I looked at like
I
what
love it.
skills and stuff required for that. It takes years and years of experience and practice to become an animator, but I am happy to just take a little small step towards it, because that was actually my dream for the longest time, is to work at this
Really?
Pixar. So that was like one of my biggest dreams growing up. So I'm glad I'm using this time to actually, you know, take a little small baby step towards that.
Yeah.
I don't know, Eileen. People go to school to be as good as you, and you haven't gone to
No.
school to be this. You just made, wow. I'm like at a loss for words. I don't know how you did that. That's so much dedication. But it's so nice. Good job.
Eileen's like, nah, I'll just be a surgeon. Easier.
Is it easier? It probably is easier.
I feel like Eileen is like, you know, in that scene in Legally Blonde where they're all sitting around and the guy's like, and they're like, I did my PhD in like microbiology and then I dewormed orphans in Uganda. And then now I'm here at Harvard Law. I feel like that's Eileen. It's like I was a pianist at Juilliard and now I'm just going to be a surgeon.
Oh my gosh.
100%.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. You
Thank
guys should play around
you.
with it.
Thank
Of
you.
course.
I love you so much. Although I
You
still
did such a great job. Such a great job.
Thank you.
My
so
God,
who's
it
gonna
sounds
make
like a-
icons for the lab now?
Yeah, we
Nicole?
can make our Bab Lab icons. Nicole, I'm passing the baton to you.
Yeah.
I'm receiving it. I'll make you proud.
Yes, you will. Yeah, so if you guys have any like GIF ideas for Instagram story, I'm talking to you, Nicole, because you're doing it. If you need anything, because we don't have access to the iPad yet, but if you have anything that you want, just let me know. I can just make some for the Bab Lab.
Awesome.
All right, I'm gonna stop this recording.